If we are going to be talking about ways to communicate asynchronously when it comes to your course, the four main ways that you're going to be doing this in your online course are most likely going to be the announcements tool, the forums tool, the email tool, and all of those three are in Sakai, and then just your normal Duke email. Just diving right in, the announcements tool, it's built into Sakai. It allows you to have regular messaging to your students. When you're making messages like that, you're going to want to follow the same kind of guidelines that Heather illustrated before. You're going to want to show them any due dates, what the topics are for the week, a Zoom link, anything that's relevant to their week, just in the course. Additionally, they can be scheduled ahead of time. So if you have students in other time zones, then you can go ahead and pre-write your announcements and then have them be scheduled to go out at a time that perhaps your students would be more attentive. And they stay in Sakai, so your students can come back and check the announcements tool anytime. But instead of simply just looking at this on a PowerPoint, I think that it would be more useful for us to dive right into it. So I'm going to swap us on over to a Sakai site. So this is just a normal test Sakai site. And I'm going to navigate on over here to the announcements tool. And what we're looking at here is just a normal announcements tool. This is a test site, so currently there's no announcements, but it's as simple as just adding an announcement here. And every announcement needs to have a title and it needs to have a body. And so any kind of thing that you would put in a subject header of an email or anything like that. And then the same kind of thing that you would put in the same sort of email that Heather showed you earlier. You know, any due dates, topics, things of that nature. By default, access and availability are pre-configured with the recommended settings that we would say you should use. So members of the site can see it and then post and display it immediately. Generally speaking, you're going to be sending out announcements when you need them to be sent. But if you want to schedule ahead of time, then you can use this specify dates button. Uh, Also, the email notification is set to high. We recommend that. There's different ones, so like people could opt out of lower level notifications, or you can set them to be none. We recommend high. Most of your communication that you're going to be doing with your students asynchronously is going to be really important. And then from that point, after you've got a title, a body, and set these for whatever you need them to be, you can just hit post. And so if I just type in a test announcement and have an announcement here, we can post an announcement or we can preview it. And this is exactly what it'll look like. It'll just say subject test. It'll say who has done it, who can see it, and then this is what your message text looks like. So moving on from there, the next tool that we think that would be really useful for you, the forums tool. So forums are an integral part of Sakai. They are going to be the place where most of your asynchronous interaction is going to be done, most likely. So your communication with your students asynchronously, and then their communication with each other. Most are going to happen in the forums. It's one of those things where we've found that allowing students to interact with one another reinforces what they're learning in the material. And we've also found that group work can help ease some of the isolation that is reported sometimes in distance education, but especially in times like this. As far as creating topics and adding new things to your forums, it's as simple as, so you're going to have a basic forum here, which is just your entire site level. And then it's as simple as adding a new topic. You'll need to give a title. Descriptions are optional, but it's always nice to have them for a short description. And then a long description, this would be like your prompt or anything like that. There's all sorts of settings. Generally speaking, the defaults work great. If you have more specialized things that you would like to do with forums, I would recommend you to go ahead and drop into office hours or check out some more resources on Keep Teaching. Additionally, if you're very curious, every single tool has a help button and it will take you to the Sakai help page for that tool. To keep moving on, past that, we have the email tool, which this one is effectively just a tool to email all of your students, right? So it's similar to what you would do in a normal email, except it automatically can email everyone in your class. So there's this to all button. So when you click this button, it's going to have all of the people who are in your class be the recipients of this email. And this email is going to go directly to your student's Duke email. But one thing to remember is that this tool is exclusively for sending emails. So if you want to be able to see any kind of emails that you've sent, there's a separate tool called the email archive tool that you'll also need to enable. But when you are sending your emails, you would add a subject just like you would normally, any kind of body text or attachments like you would normally. And again, you're going to want to follow those best communication guidelines that Heather illustrated earlier. And then from that point, it's just as simple as sending, and it'll go to all of your students' Duke emails, just as if you had sent it to them directly. Past that, we're going to be talking about Outlook for web. So when you start up Outlook, you can see all of the emails that I've gotten in the past couple of hours. Things you might want to do in Outlook when you're emailing your students. If you go over to this People tab, you might find it useful to be able to create a contact list for all of your students in a course so that you can just email all of your course at the same time. That's as simple as adding or removing to a contact list. You create a new contact list, you type in names here, and so far so good. The other thing is when it comes to emailing your students directly through email, when you are creating an email for them, when you're drafting one, we really want to encourage people to blind carbon copy their students. So that button here is in the top right. I hope that, sometimes Zoom goes full screen and it's hard to see things in the top right because of the video panels. I hope you can see this, but there is a BCC button that you need to click here in order to enable the BCC field. So in this case, the reasons that we ask people to blind carbon copy their students are A, people constantly reply all to email threads that they don't necessarily mean to, and it avoids a lot of unnecessary emailing throughout an entire class. But beyond that, we just want to make sure that we are taking care of any kind of student confidentiality requirements that we need to. And so the less other student data that we can give to students, the better. But as far as those go, those are going to be your four main tools. And in all of those, you're going to want to communicate the same sort of things when you're asynchronously communicating with your students. Due dates are important. What students are expected to learn, what students are expected to know for the week are important. How they can get a hold of you is very important. And there's a lot of other guidelines that you might want to follow when it comes time to actually utilize these tools in your classroom. And so